Throughout Multiverse Match, we've had a myriad of different characters, each with their own reason to fight, whether it be self-defense, to protect their friends, or just because they find it fun.
However, these two show that love or admiration for another person is enough motivation to start fighting.
Knives Chau, Scott Pilgrim's high school sweetheart.
And Sakura Kasugano, the girl obsessed with the world warrior Ryu.
For this match, we will be using a full composite of knives, including stuff from the comics, movie, and the game, and a composite of Sakura's moves, including those from Super Gem Fighter and the Marvel vs. Capcom series, but no scaling to characters she only meets in those games. We're mainly basing her stats on the canon from Street Fighter and Rival Schools, but that does also include the Udon comics and the Street Fighter manga.
He's Ducko, and I'm Max. Without further delay, let's see which of these two high school students can dismiss the other for good.
Scott Pilgrim was a lowlife. After getting broken up with by the famous musician named Envy Adams, and being a third-string bassist for the band Sex Bomb, he had basically fallen into certain bad habits and life choices.
One day, while on the bus, he met Knives Chau, who was at the time being pressured by her mom to get a boyfriend. After Scott helped her pick up her books, they got together, and Scott was officially dating a high schooler. He had hit rock bottom. Scott was only dating Knives because it was simple and easy, but Knives had actually fallen in love.
But Scott soon drifted away, after a girl named Ramona Flowers literally started showing up in his dreams, and then, in real life, at a party, though he embarrassed himself. Then, as a delivery girl. For a while, Scott dated both in secret, but eventually something had to give, and Scott's reluctance to break up with Knives had to be gotten over. Knives didn't take too kindly to this, though.
That's putting it mildly. One time while Ramona was at the mall, she straight up attacked her. Ramona's not your run-of-the-mill girl, though, but neither is Knives. She'd need some surprisingly superhuman physicality to be on even footing with her.
Not to mention that in the movie, she fights alongside Scott to take on Gideon, as well as being able to take on everything Scott, Ramona, Kim, and Steven Stills could in the game, including all of Ramona's evil exes. With her flying air kick, she can bust down a wall, she can also break metal with her swords, and she can very easily lift people over her head and throw them.
Knives has the agility to leap several stories high in the mall. She was quick enough to kick Ramona's hammer out of Envy's hands before she could react, and she even seemed to be quick enough to graze Ramona, cutting her face. In general, she has the speed to zip around at high speeds like a ninja.
She can take hits from basically anyone in the Scott Pilgrim cast, usually Ramona or the evil exes, and she endured a punch that took the highlights out of her hair, whatever level of durability that is. She continues her vendetta against walls by being blasted through several of them, and can even survive meteors falling onto her, mainly those summoned by Gideon Graves.
Keep in mind, most of this shocking power stems purely from her love of Scott. While this may seem absurd, and bordering on the line of a possessive obsession, she utilizes this namely in the Scott Pilgrim video game to help him take on some of Ramona's evil exes. A bit ironic, because she doesn't actually want to help Scott end up with Ramona, but, you know, it helps.
Against Gideon specifically, she was able to take down his giant form, whose body passed above the clouds, summoning lightning in the process for her to dodge, as well as meteors. There's also Todd Ingram, whose psychokinesis flung her and Scott hurtling through the air.
Knives turned out to be an excellent fighter. Not out of place for this universe to see someone who just seems normal and then find out they can juggle you in the air with 64 punches. This may come from having been taught by her father, who was a ninja.
Her father taught her well in the realm of sword fighting and unarmed combat. We've already basically gone into how she's a good fighter, holding her own amongst the cast. She disarmed Gideon, the big boss, of his sword by just using her scarf, which is pretty resourceful. She's also good at DDR-like games. Yeah.
Knives, as a sword fighter, has swords she can wield into battle. Well, in this one cover she does, but I don't think she ever actually uses them in anything. But at least she has her scarf, which lets her disarm her enemies.
Her name is Knives, so she has knives, or, well, daggers, that she is frequently seen throwing. I guess in retrospect, it was a mistake for Scott to date someone named Knives.
I guess this knife is more like a double-edged sword, cause there's some baggage that comes along with her set of skills. Knives was emotionally screwed up, but she did eventually learn and mature, and she didn't want Scott anymore. They kissed and it was horrible for everyone, including you. Also, she can be seen somewhat frequently ending up disarmed from her weapons.
Maybe it's for the best that she didn't end up with somebody as scatterbrained as Scott. Also somebody who's like 10 years older than her or something. But she did mature and grow as both a person and a fighter over those months together, and proved to be a good person who had grown at the end.
You broke the heart that broke mine. Get ready to tear down!
It was in the early 90s when the Second World Warrior tournament began. With electricity-infused beastmen and fire-breathing yoga mystics a part of this lineup, you could imagine someone would have to be really strong to persevere to the top of this tournament, which turned out to be actually ran by the evil conglomerate Shadowloo.
This was Ryu, who was able to take down the dictator M. Bison and his Order of Heavenly Kings. But, just as mysteriously as he appeared to fight these evils, he disappeared. But not without leaving an impact on those at home viewing the competition. Such was the case of Sakura Kasugano.
Sakura adapted what she saw from Ryu's fighting style into her own, but it wasn't enough, so she went on a journey to find Ryu and actually train with him. At first, Ryu didn't want anything to do with her, so she had to settle with Dan Hibiki. But then she found out that Dan was an utter fraud, after kicking his ass multiple times, even as a rookie. So she went on her own way, training across the world, and even acquiring a rival-turned-friend, Karen Kanzuki, a rich girl she met in Thailand.
Though her and Karen did often show their strength from time to time, eventually she learned so much so that Ryu actually did take her under his wing. With training from him, she certainly had to be really strong to not only spar with Ryu, but get attacked by him.
Even before getting trained by Ryu from Streets, she was strong enough to knock over and defeat the Red Cyclone, Zangief, a grizzly wrestler who spars with bears for a hobby. Zangief also takes on Balrog, the boxer who one-shot Dalsim's pet elephant. Poor animals.
More importantly, however, Balrog and Birdie survived the blast that whipped out of Shadowloo base. This is consistent, and Karen can take on her own Heavenly King, in Fong.
And again, while Sakura has sparred with Ryu, Karen herself has sparred with Ken, drawing more parallels between the two rivals. Keeping up with Ryu means she should be similar to him in speed, and Ryu effortlessly dodges bullets. She can also move faster than the eye can track in a super move, and she can catch hot dogs. Well, this baseball guy, Showa Samomura, hit a hot dog towards her with a baseball bat, and she caught it with her teeth.
Sakura also has great durability, usually taking hits from people like Maki from Final Fight, who should be on par with Mike Hagar, the same guy who pile drives sharks. But when it comes to what happens to Sakura directly, she's taken hits from another wrestler, Rainbow Mika, who herself has given Zangief a run for his money.
We should clarify though, she should not fully scale to Ryu and Ken, and beyond. So no, she's not reaching the levels of M. Bison, Akuma, or Gil. She did defeat the big bad of rival schools, Hyo, but he's far different than their Street Fighter powerhouses. But she's come pretty far from merely imitating Ryu, so let's go into what she can do.
Sakura's moveset, as detailed by her story, is heavily influenced by Ryu's moveset, which is a variation of Goken's Ansatsuken fighting style, turning the martial art into a non-lethal form. Sakura can manipulate ki, but her attacks tend to be weaker than Ryu's, although some are actually faster. As she comes from multiple fighting games, you may expect her move list to be extensive, and, well, it is.
She can fire the signature energy ball known as the Hadoken, though she fires them diagonally. The rest of her moves are similar to Ryu's, but further changed, and don't have the same names. There's the Shoryuken, similar to the Shoryuken uppercut, which has longer range but slower startup. The Shunpyukaku is similar to the Tatsumaki Senpyukaku, a spinning mid-air kick, which not only moves forward, but also allows her to bypass projectiles. The Sakura Otoshi starts out like a Shoryuken, but ends with her landing towards the foe, slamming down with both of her fists. The ear twist grab is what it says. She gets up on someone's back and starts twisting their ears, then headbutts them at the end.
In the game Super Gem Fighter, Sakura becomes more comedic like a cartoon character, whipping out wands, scooters, umbrellas, basically whatever she wants out of hammer space.
And for every Street Fighter game she's appeared in, she's learned a new special skill. With the right timing, she can immediately counterattack with her Alpha counter. With her focus attack, she builds up energy into a focus strike to stun a target. And in Street Fighter V, her V skill, the Harukaze, imbues her attacks with a glowing blue aura, making them faster and stronger for a brief period of time.
Finally, she has her super arts. The Shinku Hadouken can fire either a giant Hadouken or a wave of multiple smaller Hadoukens, as well as the Madara Sakura and Haru Ichiban, where she travels as a blur to perform strikes faster than the eye can track.
The Haru Ranban is an alteration of the Haru Ichiban, where she ends the super combo by kicking her opponent in the air. Finally, she has Sakura Rain, where she basically does all 3 of her signature moves in succession.
Speaking purely non-canonically, Sakura can tap into the Dark Hado, kind of like Evil Ryu, turning into Evil Sakura, where she can perform Akuma's soul-killing Raging Demon. Again, this is far from canon, and so is her attack where she gains the ability to wear a Playboy Bunny outfit and get 2 muscle men to beat up her enemies for her. Naturally, yes, that's what's going on off-screen.
These have no bearing on the actual results of this fight, but what actually does are her blatant weaknesses. For one, she's, again, basically just imitating Ryu for most of her career.
A lot of Sakura's attacks have short range, even her projectiles can't travel that far. She's pretty naive, doesn't strategize often, and her key attacks are reliant on her current energy levels, and can become weaker as the fight goes on.
But still, she's had a great fighting career for herself, and eventually she even gained the respect of Ryu. Though, at the end of the day, she did eventually slow down and settle into a more normal life, even working and running an arcade. If the situation calls for it though, Sakura will always be around to step in when the other world warriors aren't enough.
It doesn't matter though. I'll get to see him soon enough at the tournament. Hang on, Ryu-san. I'll be there before you know it. Hope you're ready to fight.
Nobody blink! Go for it, man!
I really don't have anything to add to that, other than, fight!
Fight!
Hadouken! I did it!
This was an extremely close match.
Don't say that. You're lying through your teeth, you fiend.
Okay, yeah. Even disregarding the stats, Sakura had too much going for her. Sorry, Knives. For one, she had way more powers and actual fighting techniques, with far better training. I think it's fairly clear that Ryu and Ken are more formidable than Knives' dad. She's even got her own random items that outmatch Knives' well, knives.
Sakura has taken on people who use sharp sidearms, like Hio, so really Knives isn't bringing anything new to the table that Sakura hasn't already seen. She can skill the bullet dodging, so Knives tossing some daggers like a party trick won't be much of a threat.
Referring to scaling, it makes the bigger picture far clearer and more unfortunate for Miss Chau. Sakura has defeated Zangief more than once, and her rival Karen has taken on a Heavenly King herself, putting them both in their ballpark. They can survive the destruction of a Shadowloo base, and should be similar to Chun-Li, another highly skilled fighter, whose Kikosho blast created a giant crater in the ground, both near large town level feats.
Knives actually could have the speed advantage scaling to Gideon, who can summon lightning in comparison to Sakura dodging bullets, but this is not from the primary source, being from the game instead of the comics. Gideon's body is gigantic in its final form, and could result in some high numbers, but it was through the power of love, which she doesn't even normally have. Even if we give it to her, it wouldn't scale to her natural durability. Oh, and it should go without saying that while she did take hits from Todd Ingram, his moonbusting feat is a far cry from the series' normal feats, so, an outlier.
We're really giving Knives the benefit of the doubt here. In the grand scheme of things, she doesn't actually do a whole lot. If we were to do the same to Sakura, with counting less concretely canon sources, she would get her Dark Sakura form, whose power imitates that of Ryu himself.
Again, we didn't intend for this fight to basically turn out to be unfair. But oh well, that's just how the game is played. The Street Fighter just blatantly had more experience, better training, and too much power, as well as the reasons stated prior for Chau to handle.
Making this multiverse match's winner Sakura Kasugano.